In a town this small, everybody knows your name inside a week. Your street, your car, what time you get home. Nobody there thinks of that as dangerous. These four found out what it costs. My name is David. I'm 31, a data analyst working remotely for a tech company in California, even though I live in Havenwood, North Carolina. I moved here about 2 months ago because the rent on my 2-bedroom bungalow is a third of what I paid for a studio in Charlotte. It's not a bustling metropolis. The town's population is around 900, with exactly 1 traffic light. My routine is set. Mornings are spent at my desk. Afternoons, I walk around. Maybe grab something from Henderson's General, which doubles as the post office. Every Wednesday, the Havenwood Gazette comes out, a 4-page weekly paper. It has obituaries, bake sale announcements, and a new in-town column listing new residents by name and street. I saw my name, David Miller, and my street, Maple Drive, printed there. It felt a little embarrassing, like the whole town was gossiping. But mostly I thought it was sweet and quaint. This all started about a week after my name appeared in the Gazette. Checking my mail, I found something tucked amongst the flyers. A small, plain, white index card, handwritten in neat, old-fashioned cursive. No envelope, no stamp, just slid right in dark blue ink. It simply read, "Welcome to Havenwood. We hope you settle in well." No signature. I didn't think much of it. Havenwood is a small town, and people are known for being friendly. I figured it was a local church group, or a shy neighbor trying to be welcoming. It seemed like a nice, harmless gesture. But then it happened again. 3 days later, another card. Light green this time, and more specific. "The blue paint on your porch looks lovely, David. A real improvement." I had painted my porch that exact color the previous weekend. I still thought it was just an observant neighbor. Then, 2 days after that, a yellow card. "Saw you out for your Tuesday morning run. Keep up the good work." I do run every Tuesday. It was getting less charming. More specific, another card came with a pie recipe saying, "Hope you got some sleep after your late night with that spreadsheet." I had been up until 2 a.m. working. The cards kept coming, sometimes daily. They always knew my routine, errands, even what I'd bought at Henderson's. It was unnerving, but I told myself it was a small town. People talked. I convinced myself it was just small-town busybody stuff. Then, last Thursday, a card arrived. Plain white, same neat cursive. This one crossed a line, it said, and I remember this word for word because it chilled me to the bone. "That new book you're reading, Whispers in the Pines, looks quite gripping. Hope you finish it soon." My blood went cold. The book, a mystery, was sitting on my nightstand, face down. I hadn't taken it outside, hadn't mentioned it. It was something only visible from inside my bedroom window if you were looking directly in. That was when charming quirk officially turned sinister. I gathered all 15 cards and drove straight to the Havenwood Gazette office. The editor, Martha Gable, recognized me. I showed her the cards and asked about my new in-town entry. She pulled out a dusty binder and pointed to a neatly typed submission for David Miller, Maple Drive. "Funny thing about yours, David," she said. "Most folks drop off a handwritten note or call it in. Yours was typed and dropped off in the night drop box. Completely anonymous. Never happened before. Not like that." My stomach dropped. I noticed one small correction on my entry, a handwritten circle around my street number. and a neat 3 written above it, correcting a typed 2. The ink and the style matched the cards exactly. 2 days later, I came home from Henderson's. I double-checked the locked front and back doors, and all windows were latched. But there, in the middle of my kitchen counter, was a fresh, white index card. It said, "Forgot your milk today, David." I hadn't forgotten it. I hadn't even gone for milk. I stood there staring at the card in my own locked house, feeling absolute dread. I took all the cards, including the one from my counter, straight to the Havenwood Sheriff's Department. It's just a one-man office, Sheriff Brody, who I later learned was Martha Gable's brother-in-law. He looked at the cards, chuckled, and said, "David, this is Havenwood. People are just friendly here. A little nosy, maybe, but no harm." He called it a prank, or someone trying to make me feel welcome. He suggested I ignore them. I tried to explain the book, the locked house, the column entry correction. He just shrugged. "No broken windows, no threats, no actual crime," he said. He wouldn't even take a report. I should have pressed him more. But I was so shaken, I just left. And here's my mistake. After the porch paint card, thinking it was a friendly neighbor, I actually wrote a thank you note and left it in my mailbox. I put my name on it. That was a week ago. Sheriff Brody still hasn't done anything. I've installed motion sensors and security cameras, but the cards still arrive. Sometimes they're in the mailbox, sometimes tucked under my windshield wiper, sometimes on my porch swing. They're less frequent now, one every 3 or 4 days, but always specific. The last one I got was yesterday morning. A small white card, same neat cursive, and it just said, "Don't forget to lock the back door tonight, David. It got chilly." My name is Sarah. I'm 28, and after a pretty messy breakup, I packed up my tiny apartment in the city and moved to Willow Creek, a small town about an hour north. I'd found a ridiculously cheap rent on an old 2-bedroom house right on the edge of town, and honestly, that should have been my first clue. I got a job waiting tables at the Daily Grind, the only diner for miles. My routine quickly settled in. Up at 6, drive 10 minutes down Main Street, past the town square and Willow Creek Hardware, to the diner for my 7 a.m. shift. The most striking thing about Willow Creek was how friendly everyone was. Seriously, everyone. On my drive, people on their porches waved. Folks in passing trucks waved. Even Mr. Henderson from across the street would wave from his garden. Inside the diner, customers would wave hello or goodbye. It felt genuinely lovely, a real sense of community I'd never experienced before. I thought, this is it, a fresh start. This all started about 2 months ago. I was out on my porch one afternoon trying to figure out if my sad little tomato plant was ever going to produce anything, when Mr. Henderson shuffled over from his yard. He's a sweet elderly man with a perpetually stained fishing hat. He had something clutched in his hand. "Sarah, dear," he said, his voice a bit raspy, "you left your trowel at my place again? Figured you'd be needing it." He handed me a small metal garden trowel, its wooden handle worn smooth, flecks of dry dirt still clinging to the blade. I stared at it. "Oh, thanks, Mr. Henderson," I mumbled, completely bewildered. I didn't own a garden trowel. Never have. And I certainly hadn't ever been inside his house. I just chalked it up to him being old and a bit forgetful. Maybe he'd confused me with the previous tenant, or perhaps he'd found it somewhere else and just assumed it was mine. Small towns, right? People get a little muddled. I thanked him again took the trowel and placed it on the side of my porch, figuring I'd maybe use it eventually. No big deal, but then it kept happening. A week later, Mrs. Gable, who lives 3 houses down, stopped me on my way back from the diner. "Sarah, honey, you left this at my place after the potluck last month." She handed me a knitted scarf, a slightly faded forest green. I'd never seen it before in my life, and I hadn't been to a potluck. Then there was the time Mr. Davies, who runs Willow Creek Hardware, walked into the diner and presented me with a dog-eared paperback, insisting I'd left it on his counter. "You were just telling me about finishing your last book, remember?" he'd said. I definitely hadn't. Each item was slightly worn, clearly used, and never actually mine. I started getting a strange, prickling feeling, but I tried to laugh it off. "Guess I'm just leaving my stuff everywhere," I'd joke. People would just smile and nod. The amusement evaporated one Tuesday morning at the Fresh Picks grocery store. I was in the produce aisle when an older woman I recognized as Martha, who worked the bakery section, approached me. She had a kind, crinkly smile, but her eyes were a little too bright. "Oh, Sarah," she said, her voice a low murmur. "The new paint in your back bedroom looks just lovely. That soft blue really brightens it up. You did a great job with the trim." My blood ran cold. I'd been repainting that back bedroom, a tiny room with no window facing the street, mostly used for storage. I'd picked a specific shade of muted sky blue. Nobody had been in that room since I moved in, not a single person. Its windows faced the woods behind the house, completely obscured from the street. My mouth went dry. "Oh, thanks, Martha," was all I could stammer out, forcing a smile that felt like it might shatter. From that moment on, the little things stopped being funny. They became terrifying. A few days later, cleaning an old attic box, I found a stack of mail. Buried at the bottom was a utility bill addressed to Sarah Miller, dated August 2018. My first name years before I ever stepped foot in Willow Creek. Then, at the hardware store for light bulbs, I saw it. As Mr. Davies turned, on the wall behind the counter hung a wooden board with dozens of keys, each attached to a small hand-labeled tag. Right in the middle, clear as day, was a tag reading 142 Maple Street, my address. My heart hammered. A few days after that, I came home to find my favorite coffee mug, the one with the chipped rim I used every morning, sitting on the kitchen counter. I'd left it in the sink, unwashed. It was now clean and dry, placed carefully, and the waving became a twisted clock. I started counting on my drive home from the diner. Every single day, without fail, I'd count 16 distinct waves. From porches, from cars, from the general store. Always 16. Never more, never less. It felt like a performance, a ritual. I called Deputy Miller, the only law enforcement in town. I tried to explain everything, starting with the keys. "My name is Arthur. I'm in my early 40s, and I took an early retirement from the regional accounting firm about a year ago, mostly because I was just burnt out. It's not exactly a rock star life. I spend most of my days puttering around the house here in Riverbend County and trying to fix my sleep schedule, which is why I bought a police scanner. I picked up a Uniden Bearcat BC125AT online. Nothing fancy, just a basic model. Most nights, especially after 10 or 11, I'd tune into one of the county channels. usually 154.65 or 155.475, sometimes 155,000. It's a small town, so the dispatcher, Sarah, she knows everybody. You'd hear her say things like, "Wait, Officer Jenkins, can you check on Margaret up on Maple Drive?" instead of giving an address. Usually it's just background noise, a cat stuck in a tree, fender benders, a late-night wellness check on an elderly neighbor. Pretty dull, really. This all really started about 5 months ago. One night, maybe 4 weeks ago, I was listening around 11:30 p.m. I was on 155,000, just drifting off, when the scanner crackled to life. Sarah's voice came on, a little clearer than usual. "Officer Miller, we've got a report of a large German Shepherd loose near the intersection of Elm and Sycamore. Caller is a male, identified as Arthur." I blinked. My street is Elm Street, and my first name is Arthur. It was a little odd, but nothing to really get worked up about. That's weird," I remember mumbling to myself. I figured it was just a coincidence. I had called about a stray dog last spring, a mangy-looking lab that kept sniffing around my trash cans. Sarah probably just remembered my name from that. Small town, everyone knows everyone. It made me feel almost a part of things somehow, that my name had come up on the scanner. Over the next 2 weeks or so, I started noticing it more. Elm Street, my street. It just kept coming up. Nothing alarming, mind you. "Officer Evans, we've got a call about a car parked a little too long on Elm, near the old Smith place." Or, "Officer Jenkins, wellness check requested for Mr. Henderson on Elm Street, porch light still on at dawn." There was a call about a kid's skateboard left in the road one morning. Another about a garbage can knocked over. It started to feel like the scanner was focusing on my neighborhood, like Elm Street was suddenly the busiest place in Riverbend County. I was almost amused by it, wondering if our little block was just having a bad run of luck. Then came last Tuesday night. It was around 10:45 p.m. I was in my front room, settled into my old recliner, reading an old paperback novel. I had just one lamp on, a standing lamp in the corner, and I was wearing my faded blue sweatpants and a gray t-shirt. My usual evening routine. The scanner sitting on the end table beside me crackled. It was on 155,000. Sarah's voice again. "Officer Miller, welfare check request, 1673 Elm Street. Caller reports a male subject, mid-40s, wearing blue sweatpants and a gray t-shirt, seated in the front room. One lamp illuminated. My address, 1673 Elm Street. My clothes, my exact situation, right down to the lamp." My stomach dropped. I went to the window, slowly pulling back the curtain. There was nothing outside. No car, no person, just my dark street, dead quiet. My heart just stopped. The next morning I called the Riverbend County Sheriff's Office. I asked about a welfare check call to my address last night. The officer on the phone checked his records. "Sir, we have no call logged for that address last night, welfare check or otherwise." He sounded confused, like I was asking for something that didn't exist. I asked about channel 155. "Sir, our county uses 154.675 and 155.475. We don't transmit on 155,000. You're probably picking up a neighboring county bleeding over." 2 days later, I was cleaning out the gutters on my house, something I put off for too long. That's when I spotted it, on the peak of my roof, near the old TV antenna. A second, small black antenna, about 8 inches tall, fixed directly to the shingles. There was rust on the screws, The plastic was faded. It was old. Older than the 3 years I've lived here. It wasn't mine. The calls kept coming on $155,000. Not just about my house, but about me in real time. Male subject just moved to the kitchen for a glass of water. Subject now at the back door looking out. Male subject back in the front room watching television. All perfectly accurate as it was happening. I started to feel cold all the time. I called the sheriff's office again the next day. I explained it all, the phantom calls, the antenna on my roof, the real-time descriptions. Sarah, the dispatcher, who I know a little from the grocery store, was polite, but she sounded like she was talking to someone who was losing their mind. Arthur, I'm telling you, 155,000 isn't one of our channels. Your scanner must be picking up something else, like a radio hobbyist. The sheriff himself called me back later that afternoon. He said my scanner was probably malfunctioning, maybe picking up some old ham radio frequency, or like Sarah said, a neighboring county bleeding over. He suggested I just turn it off. I should have called them right then. About the antenna, about the real-time descriptions, but I didn't even think of that until after he hung up. I just said, okay, Sheriff, that was 3 days ago. I haven't turned the scanner off. I can't. I listen to 155,000 every night now. It's on right now, sitting beside me as I type this. The low staticity constant buzz. I haven't heard my name or my address in the last 12 hours. The calls are still coming in about other things on Elm Street, always on 155,000. But I just remembered something. When I bought the Uniden, the electronics store made me fill out a county registration form. Name, address, serial number, and a box right there for intended monitoring frequencies. I put 155,000 in it. They knew what I'd be listening for. My name is Sarah. I'm 32, and I moved to Havenwood, rural Pennsylvania, about 3 months ago for a nurse job at its only clinic. It's quiet, pays the bills, and the clinic itself is charmingly old school. This all started about a month ago. The Havenwood Community Clinic is basically a house converted into an office. 2 exam rooms, small waiting area, cramped back office. Everything here is paper-based. No digital records. Our main storage is a massive olive green metal filing cabinet with 6 drawers in my office. Every single resident has a folder, going back decades. Mrs. Henderson, the administrator and mayor's wife, prides herself that every life is accounted for. My daily routine involves pulling and refiling these dusty manila folders. It felt quaint, almost comforting. One Tuesday, I was going through the new patient stack. I pulled a blank folder for Amelia Blackwood. When I went to the B drawer, my finger brushed a folder already there, marked Amelia Blackwood. But the handwriting wasn't mine, and the file was already full. But I'd just interviewed her. Her intake form said she was brand new to town. I stopped, thinking it was an old file, a previous resident. Small-town clinics often have messy records. Maybe Mrs. Henderson hadn't purged old files, or it was a duplicate from when they briefly tried computers. I just shrugged, grabbed a new blank folder, and started a new Amelia Blackwood file, tucking the old one back. But then it happened again, and again. Over the next few weeks, every time a new patient came in, a young couple, a retired teacher, I'd go to start their files and find one already there. Always in a thin, precise, slightly slanted handwriting that wasn't mine. The dates on these pre-existing files always seemed to be just a few weeks before the person actually moved to Havenwood. A file for Thomas Jenkins would be dated a month before he'd even closed on his house. It was weird. I even joked about it to Mrs. Henderson once. You're opening files for people before they even know they're moving here. She gave a tight smile. We like to be prepared, dear. The joke stopped being funny on a Thursday afternoon. I was alphabetizing lab results in the S drawer. I pulled a few files forward and saw it. Tucked behind Mrs. Stern's thick file was one that simply said, Sarah Miller. My name, my full name. My stomach dropped. I pulled it out, fingers trembling. The date on the tab was from the week I had my job interview before I'd even moved. And then, a line that made me feel icy cold. Relationship with David terminated 6 months prior to moving to Havenwood. I had never told anyone in Havenwood about my mother's illness, let alone David. Not a soul. I flipped through my own file. Each page was dated with entries every week since I'd arrived. Small observations like patient seen at Havenwood General Store buying oat milk, Tuesday 7:15 p.m., or new flower boxes on porch, front door painted blue. The handwriting was consistent, not mine. I felt sick. I slammed my file shut. Then I started looking for other files. I found the file for the previous nurse, Carol, who'd worked here for decades. Her file was thick, but the very last entry, dated 3 months ago, just days before I was hired, ended abruptly mid-sentence. Patient reported difficulty sleeping, advised. And then, scrawled underneath in that familiar, precise hand, was a single word, relocated. No signature, no date. I tried to pull open the bottom drawer of the cabinet, the very last one which I'd never accessed, but it was locked. It was solid. Mrs. Henderson kept a small, ornate silver key on her key ring. She must have the key to this one too. Later that day, as I was leaving, I saw a new blank file on my desk, with a label already typed. The Williams family. I knew them. They were buying the old Miller farm. But they hadn't officially moved in yet. They were still packing up 2 towns over. The next morning, I confronted Mrs. Henderson. My voice shook. Mrs. Henderson, I found my file. Why are there notes about my personal life? And why is it updated by someone who isn't me? She barely looked up. Oh, that old thing. We just like to be prepared for new people, Sarah. Small towns, you know. It helps us get to know our community. Her smile was unbothered, dismissive. I should have called the police right then, but I didn't even think of that. All I could think was that when I filled out my employment paperwork, I signed an acknowledgement of community intake form. Now every Tuesday, a fresh sheet of paper appears in my file. I don't see who puts it there. I don't ever see Mrs. Henderson with my file, but it's there, with another small, precise update about my week. Today's entry noted I bought new curtains for the living room window. I still work at the clinic. I still pull patient files. And every time I open that S drawer, I see my file sitting there, waiting for its next update. Sometimes, I swear I can feel the weight of every other folder in the cabinet, watching me.